I thought I'd do a video on some weird gas mask designs. Now a lot of these designs make sense, but I'll go through them because often when I do videos on some of these masks, people go, that's a really weird looking mask, why does it look like that? So I'll try and explain it, and I thought I'd go through some of the masks that, you know, have weird designs. Of course this is not a conclusive list, I've only got about 4 masks here to show you, whereas, 5 masks here to show you, whereas there's probably dozens if not hundreds of weird looking gas masks out there if you want to go for them. So the first one's a replica, but this is a replica of a World War I PH gas hood. And this is one people say, wow, this is a really freaky, weird looking thing, what is it? And bear in mind this is a cheapish replica, because you normally get a couple of different replicas of these. This is a cheaper one that uses plastic. You can get more replicas that are made more like the original, but this was only about £15 I think when I got on eBay a while ago. So, you know, it was one where, for the price, I thought it was quite good for what it was. So, you'll notice it's made out of a kind of flannel sort of cloth, and there's a reason for this. So let's get it on as best I can, and the reason I have this coat on is to try and demonstrate how these were used. You would tuck them into a big sort of greatcoat or, you know, soldier's coat, and the reason was that was to try and get the gas proofing as good as possible. So they're not the most comfortable of things, particularly because of how the eyes work and everything on it, but what you would do is the actual material of the hood would be treated in a neutralising chemical that would stop chlorine gas, and when you breathed in, because this flannel was essentially coated in a chemical, it was not piss as a lot of people like to say, it was, you know, a proper actual chemical these were treated with in a factory, quite a strong industrial chemical. It neutralised the chlorine, so you breathed the chlorine vapour through it, only actual air would come through with the chlorine removed, then you'd exhale through this little pipe. You'd hold it in your mouth like this, breathe out. The flapper valve only lets the air out one way. As I said, not very comfortable. These are around for about a year before they were replaced by actual box respirators, but as these things stand, they are quite an interesting bit of history. And I said this is a replica, it's only a cheap replica, because people in some of the videos go, that's not a real World War I gas mask, you're lying. Oh, I already said it is a replica mask, but there you go, it's quite an interesting thing, but the reason it's cloth makes sense, because you breathe through it. It's a bit like if you had a damp rag over your mouth, but it actually had a neutralising chemical on, but it gives full head protection. So, PH replica gas hood, that's why it's a weird cloth design, because it was used like that. So next up on my list I have any of the American M9 type masks. This is actually a Finnish M61, but it's the big nose on it that people always laugh about. They say, why is that nose so big on the gas mask? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it's the Tissot tubes go through it, and if you don't know what Tissot tubes are, Tissot tubes, you can just about see them, maybe, one there, one there. It's a design put into gas masks that's named after a French guy who invented it. Tissot. It's basically that when you inhale, the air is brought through a tube that goes into each of the eyes, and that defogs the eyes. You know how if you're in a car and it's fogging up, you blow cold air onto the windscreen, or you blow air onto the windscreen with your blower unit in the car? Exact same process in a gas mask. The air coming through the filter is blown through. And the other reason it's got a big nose is to fit the oral nasal cup inside. As you can see, like that. This does have a bit of dead space. It's not a brilliant design in terms of, you know, that regard, but it is at least, you know, it makes sense why they've done it. So the big nose on this mask is to simply accommodate the Tissot system. So there you go. As I said, there is a bit of a dead space. I have to push it quite far before it touches my actual nose. But the design made sense why they did it. So it's not a stupid design, because if you've ever heard the expression, if it looks stupid but it works, it isn't stupid. And that's an example of this. The big nose served a purpose. As designs went on, they were able to, you know, reduce the size of these components down and find other ways of doing stuff in a mask. But it has a big nose for a reason. Right. next on the list is the XM28. I know a lot of people like this mask. I really like this mask. It's one of the most expensive masks I've bought, not because it's necessarily worth a lot of money, but finding American masks in the UK is hard, and I had to bid against quite a few other people to get this. So, the XM28, if you know, I really hate cheek filter masks. I think they're a stupid design. The XM28 is basically an improved M17. The idea was that when the M17 came out, it was meant to replace M9 style masks, and it was meant to be lighter than the M17. The M17 was basically meant to be lighter than the American M9, and the idea was that you'd have a mask that was lightweight, you know, it was really compact, easy to use, it was meant to have all these features about it. None of them came true. You ended up having a mask heavier than the M9 that was, you know, bulkier and everything else, and the icing on the cake was the filters couldn't be changed without taking the mask off, thus exposing yourself to contaminated air, and the filters weren't easy to put in. So they had to come up with an improved design, and the XM28 is it. But you'll notice it's XM. That in American speak means when something's actually in service in America, it's called M. Like, they have this really confusing M system where it's like M1 carbine, M1 Garand, M1 tank, you know, so you can't just say, oh, it's an M1, because there's loads of things in M1. But regardless, with getting off topic, aren't I? The XM28 was the prototype replacement for an M17, and it did enter limited service, but unfortunately it didn't actually replace the M17. The M17 stayed into service until the M40 replaced it, with the M9 still being kept partially in service because it was a better mask than the M17. But this did what the M17 was actually meant to do. It's very lightweight, it's quite comfortable, you know, it has all the advantages. One issue is I don't think they ever made these with NBC filters, which is a bit of a problem because they did issue them to some troops and then the mask would not protect them. But what it was very good as is a riot control agent, because riot control agent mask, because it's lightweight, it would block tear gas, and it's comfortable. So I'll put on briefly. I don't want to particularly breathe through the filters for long in case they're a bit dodgy. I'm going to have to undo the straps first. Okay, so here's the XM28. It's comfortable, it's very lightweight. Some people have said, is this a gas mask dogs are meant to wear? No, it's not a dog's gas mask, it just kind of has a canine shape. The slang term for this name is grasshopper, because it has kind of insectoid look. You do get a very good field of vision though with how close the lenses are together, and it is a really comfortable mask. You can actually hear I'm struggling to breathe through it. That's because the particulate filters in this mask are very old, and obviously they're quite clogged up, so they're not working very well. But regardless, the XM28 is a very cool mask. It's one of the few cheek filter masks I like, because as a lightweight mask, for maybe using it for riot control, it does that very well. And it looks really interesting and cool. So, continuing with the cheek filters, here's another interesting design. This is the Soviet PBF. And this is, in some ways, a really advanced mask. It's just a shame it takes cheek filters. It has these really big disc cheek filters that look like sort of big hamster cheeks when a hamster's got food in its cheeks to carry it. But you'll see on the inside that it does actually have, maybe, if the camera can get that. Yeah, there you go. It actually does have an oral nasal cup. So it is a good design in that regard. You know, it's made to be advanced. It has a voice diaphragm. Again, the filters are fairly heavy in it, but it's not too heavy. This is one of those masks where I think if they cut the size down of the cheeks, where there was no cheek filters, and then had 40mm threads on each side, this would have been a really good Soviet mask. Sadly, they didn't do that. People have said, isn't that what the PMG is? No, because the PMG has a couple of differences. For example, how this has the oral nasal cup in and a better voice diaphragm. It's a much more advanced design. As said, Soviet filters probably all have asbestos in. At least all the filters that have been tested have been confirmed to have asbestos in, so what I'm going to do is take a big breath in and put the mask on. If I breathe through it slightly, that's not too much of a risk, but obviously don't wear these for fun and keep breathing through them, it's not a good idea. But as you can see, the mask, the voice diaphragm works well, and apart from the stupid weird looking cheeks, it's quite a cool mask. It's actually fresh as seals on my face, but it's fairly comfortable actually for what it is. It's still a cheek filter design, which is stupid, but at least compared to the M17, these were lighter weight, more comfortable masks. You know, and I think, again, if they were being issued as a police or a riot mask, where you didn't have to worry about, you know, dying from gas exposure. If the filters expire in use, then yes, they are a good design. But as said, it's still a cheek filter mask, but yeah, they do look weird, so that's why it's on this list of weird gas masks. And last one I have is, I believe this is an MCU2P, American mask. People keep asking me, if I get replacement straps, can I test this? Sadly, the mask does have a leak somewhere. I think it's the glue around the eyepieces is going. This is a mask, when America went to the M40 mask for the Army, I think it was the Navy and Air Force had this mask. And it's quite cool. The reason I want it on this video is because a lot of people are like, oh, it looks astronaut-y. It's because it's an early mask of a panoramic lens, which is a big, wide, you know, lens. It also has the ballistic cover on it, which is quite interesting. There's two lenses here. There's the big, you know, ballistic one here, the sort of polycarbonate type thing. And underneath there's kind of more of a film type lens that's not as, you know, thick and good. And the idea was that you could have this on to make the mask stronger, but I think in theory you could take this off and put a scope or a sight and lean into it more. It's some clever ideas, but the M40 ended up being a more robust and better mask. But, you know, this is an interesting thing. I said, sadly, I can't really test it, because even if I got the straps, air will keep coming in from like all around the lens, because there's definitely a gap in it somewhere. But it is an interesting mask, and it does look weird. I've not done too many videos on this because of the reason, you know, I've said before, which is that it leaks and it's not a complete mask. But US masks are hard to get in the UK because of the US export ban. That's why I can't easily get American masks, and people keep saying, can you do a video on this American mask? I'd love to, but the issue is they're hard to get simply due to the fact that the US has some sort of export ban on them, where you're not meant to sell them, you know, because they're considered military hardware. Occasionally you will see them turn up on UK eBay. If they do, if it's a sensible price, I try and get them. Somebody very kindly did send me a link to an M40 recently, but it was a bit out of my budget and it didn't look in great condition, so I kind of just went, oh, I'll leave it for now. But yeah, so yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed that video. As said, it's these are interesting, weird looking masks. There's obviously a lot more weird looking masks out there, but these were some of the top ones. People have said, that looks weird, when I've done videos on them, so I thought I'd put them all in one video. So there you go. Weird gas masks.